talks. Now, you all represent social entrepreneurship projects, enterprises, companies with a social mission that promote including different groups. What would you say are the major barriers facing social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurs like yourselves today in Norway?
My point of view is proving that what I said back in my speech, that there are so many resources outside the box. I think to prove that over time and make sure that the narrative change is a day-to-day struggle, I guess.
I think the narrative change is something that you're actually all have come in on a bit in your different talks. We need to change the narrative about who's being included where, and maybe even stop talking about including. That everybody should just be inside.
Yeah, so I would say that there are some issues facing social entrepreneurs in Norway. The first is actually the idea that social enterprise have to be non-profit. I think that is a big hindrance for scaling these businesses because they become totally dependent on public money because very few others will support them. So that I think is a big challenge. And the second challenge, which is a shout out if there is any politicians out here, it is this Norwegian like in Norway, to get funding, you need to apply for a grant. And the main reason for that is that the threshold that the public sector can buy without making a tender is 100,000 NOK. Now, in Germany, it's up to 100,000 euros. So the thing is that this means that you're forced into this applying system, which means that you tend to use a lot. I use more time on bureaucracy in Norway than I do in all other countries combined, because of the structural system. And the result is that the public sector don't buy services in Norway. They don't follow up because they give a grant. And then they accept to have a full report on all the results. Whereas when you work in other countries where they buy it as a service, they actually think, shit, we need this thing, and they follow up. So So as a whole, I would stay away from starting social entrepreneurship in Norway.
On that positive note, I definitely see what you're getting at, that applying for funding. And Eskil, I know you've had some experience on this, applying for funding, whereas selling your services. And you've actually faced up to a couple of things in your business model recently with regards to selling services and who your customers are.
Yes, we have been struggling with the same thing, but thank God in Norway as well as other places there are impact funds now that have long-term investment strategies for things that are not that financial, because it's like you say, it's so hard to get investors to invest when they see that there is no output, but thank God now there is a change. There are many impact funds coming up as we speak.
That's positive. How does Charge get their funding?
Yeah, great question. So I'm from an incubator called Charge, and we do something similar to Startup Migrants. We give entrepreneurship training to immigrant founders so that they can learn how to start their own businesses and essentially become their own bosses and also employ others. And so there's a lot of value in it. But yeah, we're actually funded by Oslo kommune, Viken fylkeskommune, DNB, Sparebankstiftelsen. And so we're publicly funded and we're reliant upon grants. So we actually spend a lot of effort in that, and that's also does hamper our ability to make impact in the long run, because we're always dependent on funds for a shorter period of time, and then we have to spend time on making applications and doing reporting and so forth. yeah, which is important, and definitely that's something we do to create value, and we're dependent on that revenue source. But it would be better to have other sources of revenue as well that could make our impact become more sustainable in the long run. Yeah, so I agree with Nikolai on that part, and also on the bureaucracy aspect. We noticed that one of the stumbling blocks for our participants is system understanding. That and language and obviously network, but system understanding such as how to pay taxes, how to register your businesses, and all of that is, I would say the information is not as accessible and user-friendly as it might have been, although Altinn have done a lot of research and work to make it more user-friendly, but in my view, I think it could be even more accessible, like the kind of information that's out there. So that's one of the things that we try to do, is actually making information more accessible.
I have been a startup advisor, and one of the people that came to me once, and I said to him, "You have to remember about paying tax. It's really important in Norway." He said, "No, he's definitely going to pay tax. He just needs 2 or 3 years to save up money first." And that's maybe what you meet. I come from South Africa. A lot of people save up money before they pay their taxes in South Africa too. Nikolai, you had a comment.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that actually a lot of the inclusion of the sort of structure for entrepreneurs is getting much better. And there is this paradox in all of this, because actually starting a business, if you're starting a normal business in Norway is actually very good. It's the 7th easiest country to start a business. So I would say that it's not the entrepreneurship system that is the main challenge. It's sort of the customer acquisition. So I would actually, say we should start a little allegiance on changing the policy on these things. Yeah.
I hope everybody's taking notes, because in the next section you're going to come with advice to the projects as to what needs to be done in Norway. So take notes. We've just come through a pandemic. Some of the groups that you will recommend, and I think it was Nikolai, you mentioned that the pandemic has had actually quite a profound effect. How has the pandemic affected your organizations and the groups and people that you all work with?
We had growth because we saw that many of the things we did were, if we were not able to digitalize our school that have so many programmers, then it would be really sad. So we saw that it's possible to teach people from Alta to Tromsø to Bergen. So we were lucky in that aspect. We saw it as a possibility to scale up.
Yeah, so we have 2 programs usually each year, and each program lasts for about 5 months. And so during the COVID pandemic, we shifted into making the program more or less hybrid, more digital sessions, more so than physical. But the disadvantage with having more digital sessions instead of physical sessions is the network aspect. Because that's one of the main values in a program like ours, is that we have sessions where the participants get to know each other and get to meet new people and make acquaintances and build their network. And so that's good for both the integration perspective and also for the businesses, obviously, which is much harder when you're just on Zoom, for example, because then you have to make people take initiative to get in touch with people via LinkedIn and set up digital meetings and so forth, which varies quite a lot from founder to founder, or in our case, participants, what they end up doing. So, yeah.
I think if one can look at the positive side of the pandemic, we've definitely taken a huge leap into the digitalization of a lot of services. But like you say, we also noticed that it was the network part of things that suffered. That really. we've been talking about social inclusion and social entrepreneurship. Is there any advice that you four have got to come to the project as to, we've talked a bit about policy change, we've talked about bureaucracy, we've talked about funding. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention that should be taking back with us in these kind of projects? Now, Jan mentioned earlier today that there's going to be this toolbox. If you think that, if they were going to pack things into that toolbox, what sort of tools do we need? There we go. Nick, I'll take Rune first and then Nikolai.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that it depends quite a lot on like aligning the success factors, the success criteria of the founders, and also for us as a program to make those align. That's really important. And one aspect that we find a bit difficult is the motivational aspect, because we have founders that have very different sector approaches in their startup ideas, and people are very different stages of development. And some have past experience, some have like been running their businesses for about 2 years, some are just at the idea stage, and so it's quite challenging to align the program and the content so it's motivational for everyone, and to ensure that people do show up and are engaged throughout the program. That's a big challenge, and that comes back to success factors, I believe. Yeah, making sure it's like practical and relevant for people.
Yeah, so I would say that I had a conversation with a neighbor today about a stat that came up early, and that was that 70% or only 28% of all companies survive more than 5 years. Yeah? This is not true, because this combines all establishment, including sole proprietorships. Yeah? So if you take away the sole proprietorships, it's 48.5% of all companies that survive more than 5 years. And starting a sole proprietorship in Norway is so easy. When I was young, I did it one day when I was drunk, because I had this idea of selling stupid things, you know, and you close it down. Yeah. So like basically, I think we have to start to measure the right things. You know, we have to say we know what works. We know that if you are starting a limited company, your survival rate is way, way higher. We know that if you have a co-founder, your survival rate is way higher. We know that if you get an accountant from day one, your survival rate is way higher. And one of the things I'm getting very frustrated with all these EU projects is that we're talking about entrepreneurship, but we have to start to think about like the entrepreneurship that actually has a chance to survive. Yeah? And that means that if you're going to be a necessity founder who wants to start a sole proprietorship just to get a job, I actually think you should try to get a job, you know? So it means that focusing systematically on, you know, what do we know works, and let's do that. Yeah?
Excellent. Yeah, Rune.
I agree with some parts of it, like having like a limited liability is it's less risk, and it's better in the long run. But I would actually also say that it depends quite a lot on your scaling strategy and your ambition, because some people are livelihood entrepreneurs and they need to go out and test the waters. So maybe for a lot of people, it's good to start with a sole proprietorship and then move over to a limited liability company once they get some more experience and some exposure and get to see like there is a market for what they want to develop.
I think in the future, like Yngve said back in his speech, I think we will see more of the lines, and the silo thinking is disappearing. I think more focus on bærekraftsmål, hva var det igjen?
Sustainability goals.
Sustainability, and we will see that also in social inclusion and environmental as well. I think there is going to be a change, and I think we see it already. We should. What we did in Get Academy was to focus more on the business model part of Get Academy to make sure that it was possible to sell what we do as a business, and we have no founders yet, and I think that's what we and day by day demonstrates the most obvious that the resources are just as many outside the box as inside the box. Day by day, it's a day by day struggle, I guess.
Innovation Norway made a study showing that elderly people are more successful entrepreneur than younger people. They succeed economically more, but they are not that speedy in their scalability. Okay, so it's quite interesting to see that the experience seems that they make choices that are less economically risky for investors and themselves, and that's nice to know about it. Yeah. What kind of challenges, I think what we see from our point of view, I think very much the same thing as you see with all kind of entrepreneurship, which you basically have been illustrating here. You have to align things, you have to do what you need to do. In entrepreneurship with some kind of social mission, I think the idea of mission and vision is more central for organizing people and creating engagement around it. And since there are lots of engagement, very often they don't have economic control that easily. So my good advice is take care of your money. Make sure that you get money and don't make promises outside what you can economically be responsible for. When you have people with lots of dreams, visions, the scalability of dreams are easier than the scalability of business. And that creates some kind of expectation that sometimes is difficult to deliver. So that's at least one advice from my point of view. What we are challenging, as I partly illustrated in my entrance here, we are not expected to be economically active. So very many people expect that elderly people, they shall do things voluntarily without being paid. Yeah. And which very many elderly people do. But there are at least 10-20% of the elderly people who doesn't have that kind of economy freedom to do that kind of thing, who needs money. And I think it's very important that we gradually see the acceptance of elderly people who will get paid for what they're doing, not only showing expectation that they shall contribute everything in all kind of direction without being paid. And that is a challenge in our society, that the voluntary sector seems to, you may say, enlarge all that kind of activity and takes away the possibility for other elderly people to earn money on that kind of thing. In what you call about many people getting elderly and what will we do with the health, dementia and all this kind of thing. Today I think 8% of women are taking care of their parents voluntarily, okay? This is like childcare earlier. Childcare we made professional. And that increased the economic growth of society. Why can't we increase economic growth of society, not having 8% of women taking voluntary care of their mother and father? Maybe they don't like them even, okay? So why can't we professionalize and increase economic growth instead of expecting that elderly people shall take care of those elderly? And this is one of the challenges we have in our society, because we are not taking that kind of challenge seriously. And I'm very afraid that women will be locked up, because I don't know any man who stays out of work to take care of a sick mother and father. I don't know any man. It's 8 March yesterday, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Interesting perspectives. What I would like to know is, we've talked about this before and we've talked about it at CoLab, is how there is so much power in especially newly retired people, especially people that are just coming out of a 45-year career as an economic advisor or a lawyer or whatever. how are we going to get them more excited about participating in programs like Charge and like Immigrant Right? And even with Get Academy, if you guys could have mentors that are a little bit older for every single one of your people, how are we going to get older people excited about doing that?
So we actually advise our founders to, well, unfortunately, to find an old rich man. The reason is that there are not that many old rich women. But basically, yeah, we advise them to go out and say, okay, I want to start this business. I have a challenge, and that is my network. Now, at the same time, there are many people in this community who have had leadership positions in society, and they have one big fear, and that is to retire. So they want to have one last hit. And if you actually, and I see this, it works everywhere. It works in Norway, Germany. Like, if you as a founder approach them and say, can we just have a 15 minutes chat? You know, I'm working on this challenge, you know, and you talk to them. And I see it so many times, like these people, they say, yeah, I would like to join this. Like, yeah. And I think my take is that I think that elderly people will be more willing to help entrepreneurs who are working with their expertise than to go in and say, let me work for startup migrants in fostering any given entrepreneur. But it actually, you know, this is a big, like a fantastic success criteria for migrant founders, is that if you find this guy, you know, and he starts to call around to his friends and say, you know, I'm just on the board of this new startup. It's run by a migrant from India. You know, it's pretty cool. You know, doors open.
100%. I agree with that. We have the same experience in Charge as well, because we put people in touch with mentors who work in a way of being their business developer, and oftentimes they get to tap into their network and might end up as board members. There's other kind of positions as well that you could recruit elderly and like more experienced people into a business, like both investor, but also on the boards, and we see a lot of great synergies with linking our founders up with a mentor, business developer. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add before we round up the session?
One thing. So we in Charge, we actually do recruitment now for a new program called She Starts Viken. So if you know any female immigrant founders that lives in Viken, please encourage them to check out She Starts Viken, because we're looking for female participants. And the applications is open, so people can apply, and then we'll do interviews on an ongoing basis. So please encourage those who might be interested in launching their business or getting some more traction. Yeah.
The network's working, because I got that message in my LinkedIn inbox twice already from two other people.
Wow. Sounds like we're doing the
So
marketing right.
the network is working. It's the word is spreading.
Fantastic.
So thank you all very much for joining us.